think let's start our first talk for today. So again, thank you for having me, Andre, for PIWA again. It's my second time to talk here, and it's really a pleasure for me to share my knowledge with the fellow developers. So my talk for today is tackling not just for Angular, but specifically for also Node.js. So this is a full stack development that I will teach you, specifically real-time apps. So we're gonna discuss about real-time apps with Angular, Node.js, and Socket.io. So before we proceed on developing the full stack application, we will discuss each. What are their benefits? What are the advantages? What's the purpose of each elements that we will use in our development? So, okay, I've been introduced a while ago. So once again, I'm Seiji Villafranca. If you want to learn more about codes or other JavaScript tutorials like Angular, not just Angular and React, I also teach React. So you can visit my website, seijivillafranca.com. I have written several tutorials there pertaining to Angular, Node.js, React.js. So it's a full stack blog content. So you can freely browse my website if you want to learn more. Then you can also clone all my sample projects, github.com/cgv13. So all of my blogs are connected to this repository. So all my sample codes that are here found in my GitHub. So about me, once again, I'm the technical lead, Frontier Software Asia Philippines. I'm also a trainer in Rock Squad. Then I'm one of the community lead of Angular PH and one of the Auth0 ambassador here in the Philippines. So these are just some of my talks and events. So basically, Angular is my hometown, Angular PH community. So this is my first front end stack that I've learned since Angular 1. So I've been sharing for around 4 years in Angular development. So I've been from local talks into international talks like Angular Up. So it's really a great what these are one of the most greatest experience of my life, because I'm not just speaking for the developers, but I also learn from the top notch developers of Angular uh, locally and worldwide. So yeah, enough about myself. So let's proceed again on our topic. So first, we will discuss what we should learn in our topic for today. So what are the things that to be discussed? The first is, what are real-time applications? What can real-time do with our apps? What can it help to our clients and users, and specifically for UI or UX design? So next is, what is Socket.io? So how can it make real-time applications possible? Next is, we will learn how to apply Socket.io with Node.js. So typically, Node.js will be our main backend in our application. Then now we will apply the Socket.io in our front end, which is our JavaScript framework, is Angular. Then I will show you two examples how we are going to use Socket.io and Node.js and Angular. So the first one is a very basic example, and the other one is a pretty simple chat application that uses isolation of emitting of events and listening of actions. So first, we will discuss what is Socket.io. So what the hell is Socket.io, and what's the relation of Socket.io in creating real-time applications? So it's typically a JavaScript framework for creating real-time applications. So Socket.io is the central or the core that allows our real-time applications to be possible. So it's not, if you are familiar with REST request, so it is not a REST or HTTP REST request, but it's rather a different architecture. So what really are real-time applications? So real-time applications are applications that are not one-way in data communication. So for a REST application, the front end communicates with our back end by sending data in one way without the server sending it back to the clients connected to the backend server. Real-time applications, on the other hand, allows bidirectional data, meaning that we are using push notifications in our applications. For example, a front end sends a particular command or execution on the backend server, and the backend server emits back to all the clients that are connected to the backend server. As I have said a while ago, in simple terms, it's called the push notifications. So, comparing to our two architectures, what I have mentioned a while ago, the REST API versus the socket IO. So, REST API, simply, we are discussing here that the client calls an HTTP request to the server to to send a specific or a particular command. For example, processing the data to update the database or create or insert another data in our database. But in order for us to get the data back again on our front end server or on our client browser, we should refresh we should refresh our browser because this not contains push notifications. We will uh, it's not it's not a bidirectional communications for our uh, front end and back end application. On the other hand, socket IO allows bidirectional data. So if the client send data via events or actions, this will allow the server to push again back all the updated data or any commands that other clients or front end applications that are connected to the server. So this is the main difference of REST API and socket IO. So Socket IO in-depth architecture, we'll discuss this thoroughly. So if the client sends the data via events, so it is possible using the emit using under the IO library. So if this data is sent successfully to the server, so it will map it into a specific key message in our server, in our backend rather. So if the backend or the Node.js in our topic today is it will map all the data in the events rather in our backend, and it will execute a specific action that will go back to our client. So the action that will go back to our client is the push notifications. So how will Angular application listen to that push notifications? So we will allow Angular to have listeners in our uh, front end framework. So this is also possible by using npm library that is provided by Socket.io. So we will see this in action later on our example code on how to create listeners and how to create emitters in our backend and front end. So where can we use Socket.io? So the main question is here, why we really need real-time applications in our Angular framework? So I've listed four of I think the main reasons why we need push notifications in applications. So first one is creating a chat application. So this is basically one of the common apps that we are using. So this is the most used applications nowadays. So chat application needs push notifications. Then next is real-time analytics. So having real-time data analytics makes the user interface or user experience easier and flexible. It will allow the users see all the data in real time and the updates rapidly. Then next is document collaboration. So for example, Google Docs, the Google Excel sheets. So this is an example of real-time applications as we are seeing all the changes that are being created by other users or other connected users real time or in live. Then the other one is specifically games. So games are live or real time. So if there are multiple users connected in our applications, so we really need push notifications here for our users. All our users see any updates or any moves from their opponents or uh, other players in the application. So now we have discussed what's the use of Socket.io and Node.js and Angular. So first is we will set up our Node.js or our backend. So in order for us to set up our Node.js, so for all the developers here that are familiar with Node.js, so we will just execute the command npm init -y. So basically, this will just generate the package.json that where we will see all the dependencies that we need for our project. Then the packages needed are uh, actually this is four, but uh, the main three that we will need for our Node.js to work with Socket.io is the Express. So Express is basically used for a framework for creating REST API or HTTP request. Then second is the Socket.io. So simply this is the one that we will allow Node.js to have the capability of real-time applications. Then next is the type/socket.io, which holds the data types or the types under Socket.io. So I will discuss this thoroughly later in our sample applications. The next is for our front end. So our setup for Angular is basically, so for all the familiar in Angular, scaffolding Angular project is ng-new, then the project name itself. So if you have an Angular project already, a scaffold Angular project already, so you don't have to do it and skip this part, then there's just one package needed for us to enable socket.io in our Angular, and that is socket.io-client. And to install this library is we will just use the command npm install socket.io-client-c. So what we really need here is just to generate a service that we will start the socket.io connections. So, for example, we have already created our backend and it is deployed for a specific URL of the server. So we will just connect our Angular application to our URL of the backend. Basically, we will just create a function inside the service of Angular. Then we will place it as a parameter in the IO, and we will assign it in this the socket to be used outside our components that needs the connection. So next is emitting event to the server. So emitting event means that we are executing or we are sending the server a specific command or execution. We are using the emit function here, and the two parameters is simply the first one is the key that will allow Node.js to identify what will it execute or what will it send back to our front-end application. So the first parameter is this one. This is the key. Then the second parameter is the data that we need to our backend to process. So basically, this is like a post body for our HTTP request. Then next is how to listen on the push notifications that is coming back or that is Node.js sending back to our application, front-end application. So it's simply by using the .on function of our socket.io library. Then does Node.js will also send a specific key that will allow the front-end application to identify what particular thing the front end needs to do in our client side application. So the first one is the key itself, the broadcast. So the broadcast is the first key. Then the second part is the return data. So this is like the response body of our HTTP request. So we can compare this as the response body. So inside this data, the parenthesis, the data in the lambda function, then this is the response body that the client application can consume. So basically, that's it. So cool. We can now proceed to create our simple application using socket.io. So I will share my example code for Angular and Node.js. Okay, so now we will first set up our Node.js application. So in this part, I've already initialized my Node.js. So I've already commanded the npm init-y. So basically, what will it do is it will just generate the package.json. So this is the package.json of our Node.js app. So we are making our root folder as a Node.js project. Then next, after that is we will just install our dependencies that we need that I have discussed a while ago. So the first dependency that we need here is the uh, Express. So to install that is we just need to install Express, then HTTP socket.io, and at types slash socket.io. Then let's type save. So if we enter this command, is we will add this will add a node modules project that will hold our npm libraries, and it will list down all in our package.json. So it has the same concept with Angular. So I will just zoom all my codes because I'm sure that this is small in our screen. So here we can see that I've already installed my dependencies in our project. So next, I can now use this on our project to create to write our code. So in our dependencies, we have the express, http, socket.io, and at type/socket.io. So our next step is to create a folder named source, and let's create an index.js file inside. So here is basically we will just import our dependencies that we need. So let's try cons app, then require. First thing we need is the express, and the HTTP. So we will use this HTTP just to create the app. Then next is the IO. So we will need this is where we will use the IO or the socket.io dependency. So require socket.io. So we will use our HTTP library. Then we can also configure our HTTP security configurations here. So for example, we want the cores. So what are the only URLs are allowed to access the backend. So we can already define this under the socket.io. For example, the origins allowed is So for in this part, we'll just allow the local host for 200. So this will be the default link for deployed Angular locally. Next. So we will just let our HTTP listen to a specific port. So let's just use the 3000 port. So let's just console log if it's successful. So listen. So now we have created the basic HTTP server for our Node.js. So our goal here is to create a simple real-time application that it will just send a broadcast message to all connected users. So the first thing we need to do is we need to check if some users are connected to our application. So the key for that one is connection. Then so here in this part, the socket is the socket here, the socket that is laid that is available here as a parameter serves as our access to all the functions that we can listen to the front end commands or execution of actions or events. At the same time, um, it this will also allow us to accept keys. So for example, for this one, we'll just first code the disconnect part. So if the user disconnected, so if user is disconnected or one client app is disconnected, so this will be fired in our backend. So next is technically the one that will receive message sent. So let's just create another listener or on. So let's use the send message. So message. So this message parameter is simply the message that will be sent by the front end. So next is we want this message to be broadcasted to all connected users. So we will use the io.emit, then it will contain another key that the front end will determine. So we will just send the message. So this code is just a shortcut for message. So we will just send a JSON. We will just send a JSON object on our front end application. So basically, this is it. This is how we create a simple broadcast message using socket.io in Node.js. So the next thing we need to do is now set up our Angular application. So we can run this one. Sorry, not yet. So in this part, we'll just add a script. So let's try start. So let's just install. I forgot to install. Let's install NodeMon so we can restart our application by not ending our server. So this is an additional dependency that we can add to run our application. So, but you can also use node command to start, but it's kind of complicated because every time we have changes in our application, we need to close our server in order for our changes to be applied. So we will just install NodeMon for a while. So while we're waiting for the nodemon to be installed, so let's just type this one, nodemon. So we want to start our root file. So the listen command is located on index. So simply we'll just create source-index.js. So just a recap for our code. So we just created a simple broadcast message. So this is just one uh, event, one listener. So our listener is the send message. So disconnect, actually two listeners disconnect and send message. So our node one is now installed. So let's try running. So let's just resize this one. So let's run the npm run start command. So now we are attempting to run our Node.js backend application. So we can see that it's trying to start our app. Now we are successfully running our Node.js backend application. Then we will proceed to our Angular app. So let's share my other screen. Okay. There. So in this part, actually, I've also created or scaffold my Angular project. So because this will take a while in our demo, so we can see that we have an scaffold Angular project. Then I've also installed the socket.io-client. So we can see here in a package.json that it is currently on version 3.1.2. So this is now installed in our package.json. So technically, we can now use it on our Angular application. So this one, I'm also running our Angular app. So I will show you that later. So for this one, I will just create a folder that will house the socket.io service. So let's just create a folder. It's called service. So this is just for demonstration purposes. Then let's generate a sample service named socket.io. So let's wait for our service. So now we have created a sample service. Then this is where we will create our code for setting up our socket connection. So in this part is we'll just import our IO extension. So from socket.io-client. Now we will use this IO to set up our socket connection. So simply set up connection. So let's just add here an example variable. So this dot socket equals IO. So in this part, this is the backend URL. So this is just for demo purposes, but reusing our URL, we can use this. We can place this URL in our config or what we call the environment .ts file that is located in our assets folder or environments rather folder. So, but in this part, I will just hard code our backend URL. So our backend URL is basically that that we have created earlier, we have deployed earlier in our HTTP create server, which is HTTP localhost 3000. Then the next part is we will create a sample function here that will emit a message. So this dot socket dot emit. So in this part, this is the emit function that will allow us to communicate with our backend. So basically, this is just like an HTTP request. Instead, we are not using an HTTP request, but a third-party library, which is Socket.io. So the thing is, we're going to use the send message request or key rather. Then the message. So we will just have a message parameter that will be sent to our backend application. Next, let's just save this one. So next thing is we're just going to use this in our app component. So let's just delete this one. So I'll just create a very simple, so I will not style this anymore. So let's just create something here, a simple list that will display all the broadcasted message. So in this part, I will just create a sample array. So this will house all the broadcasted messages in our server. So I will just inject Socket.io service. Then we will send an example message. So in this part, we will call the send message. Then we have a parameter for this one. So you can see here in our definition that, the Socket.io that let's use the access Socket.io service that send message. So I'll just hard code a sample message. So this is a sample message. So in this part, we are now listening. Rather, we are now sending a sample message to our back end. So the next thing is we should listen to our messages in our client app. So for example, listen to this. So this dot. So in this part, we will access the socket dot on. So as we remember in our backend a while ago, we have used the receive message key, receive the message being sent by our backend. So we will just push this one in our messages array. So we will just list down here. So let message of messages, and we will just display this one. So basically, that's it. So let's just have a recap of our code. So I've just simply created a simple Socket.io service that will set up our connection or connect our front-end application in our backend application. So by just putting our backend URL, and I've just assigned this into a socket variable to be accessed outside this service. Then the send message that will emit to the backend, and it will send a key with the request body, just like the HTTP request for processing of data. Then in our app component.ts, we're just calling the send message to pass a message. Then at the same time, to receive all the broadcasted message, we are just listening on the receive message key. So now, let's try. There. So in this part, I'll stop. So I'll just show you the sorry about the interpolation. So I will share my browser to check the code or the result of our created application. So I'll share my Chrome. So let's visit our application. So I forgot something that will trigger the message. So let's just add a button. So I will code at the back. So I will just add a button that will trigger the send message. So there. So let's check our console log. Okay, so we have a problem here for the emit of undefined. So it's just a wrong spelling. So we forgot to call the setup socket connection. So we need to call that. So I will show you the changes of the code for a while. So I will just call the setup socket connection. There. So something's not working again. So there, now it's working. We are now pushing our application, our data rather. So this is a sample message is coming from our socket IO. So this is basically coming from the backend with push notifications. So in this part, if we have several connected clients, so the page will also be refreshed and the list is also refreshed. So for the changes of the code, I will just let you. So I just forgot a single line of code a while ago. So I will also share my screen. So first, I will let you show the front end changes. Uh, there. So what I just forgot a while ago is to call the setup connection in our application. So this one, so we need to call the setup our application that we have created a while ago in our socket.io.service. So basically that's it. Then in our backend, so basically there's not much changes. It's just the emit. So I've just committed a wrong spelling, but we can see here that a while ago we are successfully connecting to our backend. So if we refresh the page, so the user is disconnected. So we can see that it's already logging that the user is disconnected. So basically, that's how we create the socket IO.on. So I will just show you another simple application that is a simple basic chat application that I have created. And you can also clone that repository in my GitHub that I have mentioned a while ago. So now, just for a while, I will open the project. So the project is Angular socket-io. So if you have, I will provide this link from later on to be a reference in creating a simple chat application. So I will share first the front end. So this is the front end app. This will take time to run. So I will first discuss the code. Then, okay. So for this one, this is a basic chat application. So I have created several events that will allow us to receive messages, check all the online users in our application at the same time have a peer-to-peer messages. So uh, in this part, I've just created uh, several listeners or events rather. So for this one, let me discuss this one by one. So this receive messages both is for the data sender and the data receiver. So I am isolating who is the sender and who is the receiver. So I will know who will only receive the broadcast. Then the receive message sender part is, for example, it you will redirect to the user again, or you will click a particular user and you have history of messages. So this is the one will trigger to retrieve all the messages for that particular user. Then the send user list is just to retrieve all the users that are available in our application. So if another user is recently online, so we will show that it will show the list will be automatically updated in our front end. So basically, that's the one getting all the list. So we have just um, I forgot to mention that I've connected this to Auth0. So Auth0 provides automatic or a simple setup for us uh, to maintain the roles and the users and the information. And my strategy here is to use the username as the key, or rather the ID of the user as the key to identify which is the sender and which is the receiver. So in this part, in our socket.io service, so same method a while ago that I have created. So I've just um, defined our local URL, localhost backend URL, which is localhost colon 3000. Then My main actions here are send message. So basically, this is sending a message. Then I've also created the sender receiver. I have also sent the sender receiver to be identified by the node who is the sender and who is the receiver. Then the get messages is simply getting all the message uh, by sending that to our backend that we need to get the messages for a specific sender and receiver. Then the get user list is the same, um, that we will need to get all the users, available users in our application. And logout, simply it will allow us to send the server to log and destroy the token in our application. So let's just wait for our application to run. I will also run my backend. So next. So while waiting for our front end to run, we will check our back end. So I will share my back end screen. So application window. So this is my back end. So actually, I will discuss this also in simpler terms. So for our back end is we have just also defined the keys that we need or the front end needs in order for a front end to know what are the things that uh, it needs to do. So if this is the get messages. So the get messages simply um, allows the back end to get all the messages for a specific sender and receiver. So this is just my own logic. So this can be a different logic in our database. So I'm just using here a sample data store. So this is just a mock database. So my logic is simply here. But if you are using ORM, type ORM or any framework in Node.js like loopback, so it may be a different code inside. So in the IO emit, so the receive message sender, so this will be the key that will be identified by our front end application. Then another listener is the send message. So this send message is the one being sent by the front end that will be identified in the node that a particular or specific user is sending a message to a specific receiver or user. So this is I will not I will not discuss the code here specifically because this is my own logic on how the data store works. So the receive message both is the emit function that will the front end receive. So I'm just sending the sender, the receiver, and the message of the sender to the receiver. Then the get user list is, as I have mentioned a while ago, it will send all the available or online users in our application. So we'll just wait around a minute to run our front end. So Angular will just compile in a while. Yes. While waiting, I think I can also answer some of the questions that are um, available in the comments. So yeah, for Sir Pojong, is it a WebSocket? Yes, it is a WebSocket. So it's an example. So for other technologies like .NET or other languages, Socket.io is like Signal R. So it's basically also a WebSocket that is being used by Node.js. So that's WebSocket example. So what is the default port of IO for Sir Pojong again? It's for Node.js. So what we are using for the server of Node.js, that's also the port of socket.io. So Other questions is from Mappy. Looks great to use to notify users when queue jobs are completed. Yes, that's also one of the use of Socket.io. It's very good for queue jobs that are uh, for for queuing. So yeah, actually, I forgot to mention that. So it's really a good use for queuing also. So, but for lessons, remember that Socket.io is really good. Real-time applications are really good, but it's not recommended to use real-time applications on all of your features because we need to evaluate some things that is it really needed for this feature for our real-time applications because sometimes we might overuse it and might affect the performance of our application. So we need to think twice if we really need our a real-time application, a real-time feature in our application. So can you also use Socket.io to create a P2p chat app? Yes, a peer-to-peer. So this is the example I will show you, Sir Jerwin. So basically there are different strategies. So my first example is just a broadcast. So it's not peer-to-peer. It will just basically send the updates to all the users. But this one, I'm using Auth0 information. So I've created a login. So I will show you if my application already started. So this is a sample of peer-to-peer. So I'm using the ID as to isolate all the messages in our application for a specific sender and receiver. So at the same time, it can also be used for group chat messages. So it's another logic. So you will collect all the users uh, that is allowed to receive the broadcasted message. So just a specific array of users. So okay, now we have we have compiled successfully our Angular application. So I will show you my browser. Sorry about that. My browser hung for a while. So I will show you my browser. So for this one, this is an example peer-to-peer. So I've just used the Auth0 authentication. So I will log in. Sorry, I should share my full screen for this one because I will open two browsers. So we can see here. So for this one, let's open another one. So apologies for my laptop. It's running several applications, so it might hang for a while. So this is login as my email, first email. So this one, I will log this in as my second email. So this is another user. So we can see here that we have already have a peer-to-peer application. So I will show you two users that will have a peer-to-peer chat. So this one is a self-chat. So if you're doing this in Messenger, so this is possible. So I'm chatting with my own. So hello, self. I will send this one. So we can see here that it fired two messages because I've sent my message, then I've also received. So just ignore It should be the first one, but it's just for the UI, so we need a logic for that. So this is the self send. So I've received and sent a message for myself. So this one, I've already tested the data for this. So I've retrieved the data, the peer-to-peer messages for my other. So if we can see here, this is the for the self of CGV13, and this is our chat for the two users. So here, if I've created a sample message, so CG2, we can see that we have sent a message here that, and in our second user, we can see that it is also updating. So it's just like a simple peer-to-peer application. So if we send another message from TGV to my other email, so we can see that it's also receiving the message. So this is the peer sample peer-to-peer messages for Socket.io. So peer-to-peer is possible depending on the logic that you are using or the tools that you are using, like database. So basically, that's it on how to create on Socket.io. If you want to know more about my code, so I will share in PWA my PowerPoint presentation. So my GitHub is included there. I will also include the name of the project. So I have already pushed my code for Angular and Node.js to uh, for you to as a reference on creating sample peer-to-peer using Node.js and Socket.io. So that's all for my talk, and thank you. I hope you learned more. I hope you learned a lot from Angular and Node.js.